Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 128. I am your host Nathan Springer. Welcome. It is the 1st of September. Wow. Wow, we are already 9 months into the year 2022. Nathan, what aura you have thereby? Yeah, that's how you know you missed some of the lives. You missed some of the progress. We're stepping up over here at the Mindful Live studio. You're seeing the charts coming in. You're seeing the lights coming in. Yes, yes, yes. We're on an upward trajectory. Who knows where we will be in the next month? Onward and upward. How am I? I am well. Is that Scafty with the very strangely spelled name? Yes, I am well, Scafty. I am well. Grant me my wishes. I'm not a genie. All right. Yeah. The year speeding on. The year speeding on. It's September already. Yesterday was Independence Day. We had a bit of that. We had a bit of that bread and circus, as some people will call it. We went there and saw the fireworks go up, and all of that good stuff. I went. But there's a good night, Shy Panda. There's a very interesting fact when you look at what fireworks are. And the whole idea of it. When you look at it, there are some interesting facts with it, because before the run up to independence, I beat no, you did not beat Nisi tonight. Sorry, no, that's not possible, sir. Before the run up to independence, there were many groups out there, many animal rights organizations, many groups with the more bleeding hearts for the animals out there. They came out and they were asking the government, please, let's not go down this explosion route. It's traumatic to the animals. The animals don't have a good time during these fireworks celebrations. The noise really gets them going. Some animals lose their lives, etc., etc., etc. Now, part of being a government is just ignoring some people, even though they may have a good point, and the government did that. Like, I was sitting there in the savannah watching these fireworks and the noise and all of that, and I'm like, I am very much aware. Good night, Richard Glevman. I'm very much aware that the government is very much aware that there are people out there complaining about this, and they have good reason to. But that is a good ignore, Richard Glevman says. And I think you would agree then with the term I'm using now. We're talking about anthropocentrism. Anthropocentrism. And those in the more environmental way of thinking of life, they consider it an anthropocentric view. To look at it, basically what that says is that, that humans are special and apart from the regular other species. We are something more unique. We are elevated above and apart from the other species. You have an anthropocentric view, and some environmentalists are against that. They're like, listen, we aren't the center. All creatures are equal on this planet and deserve an equal place, etc., etc. But I kind of believe in anthropocentrism. Now, I am an environmentalist. I love the environment. But I think in order, in the first place, for us to even think about the environment, we have to think that we're special. Because the lions don't do environmental studies and conservationism. Lions don't care about that. In order for you to be on that level in the first place, you have to believe you're special in the first place. So I am cool with anthropocentrism. And it brings up the reality of, is it okay to risk the death of many animals just for the entertainment of quite a few humans? Is that a fair balance? Good night, Charles. Good night. If the government decides to just, blow off some fireworks, and we know very well that Yes, some animals are going to be harmed by this. And but on the flip side, many people are entertained by this. It's the effective bread and circus, as some people talk about. The people need some entertainment out there. We're now coming out of a pandemic. So yeah. And as Charles points out, yeah, that's the direction we're going actually. Because beside the government saying forget those animals, when you consider that the fireworks are launched probably what 200 meters away from the zoo, like that's really forget about those animals. They really like animals. We don't care about you. You're not on our level. Richard Glovman says, so what about the meat people does eat? Then them ain't animals too. Charles asks, why hasn't the zoo tried moving? They're expanding ever so slowly. Good question. They think that, well, the zoo has a perfect location. If you're looking to be a zoo and get a lot of traffic coming in, you have a perfect location. But I've heard people talk about the zoo possibly going down to somewhere like Grand Couva, and to be honest, I kind of agree with that. Port of Spain is too centralized in the first place. So, yeah, I kind of agree with the zoo taking all those animals. In the first place, it's not like the animals are in their home habitat. These animals have already been moved. So, it's not like not like you could say you have too much of a problem moving them and move them down to Grand Couva. Yeah, I'm sure you could get a couple acres way larger than you could get in where that is. St. Anne's, you'd call that St. Anne's there. But while they are unmoved, the entire fireworks display goes on right in the view of the animals at this Wasserman. Okay, Wasserman, good night. I'm not even going to listen. Minister, the two different names I have for you are two names I can't even finish read. Whether it's the minister of what you're the minister of, or you're the Wasserman out there. Sir, all right, sir. You and your names. But yeah, the zoo is trying to figure out what's going on here. Zoo assessing whether animals lost to fireworks. The Emperor Valley Zoo in St. Anne's is doing an assessment to determine if any animals were lost because of a noisy fireworks display at the nearby Queen's Park Savannah on Wednesday night. The fireworks were part of the celebration of TT's 60th anniversary of independence. When Newsday visited the zoo on Thursday at about midday, a member of staff said workers and vets are still doing an assessment. He urged Newsday to contact the zoo's board for more details. Now, Newsday went on to a nice all-around summary of the day at the zoo. I found it nearly like an essay back in essay days. Nice essay. Otherwise, on touring the zoo, Newsday saw several small family groups of visitors, plus a small youth group with church elders in identical jerseys bearing the group's name. Now, how do they know these people were church elders? Are they using elders here in the, what that would be, the clergy style where elders as a position? Or are they just watching the people and guessing their ages? Are you calling people old, Newsday? Is that what you're calling people? Because I want to know if they had elder with their name tag under it. I afraid Newsday bad. Charles, but the fireworks was super loud for real. I mean, it was nice, but I felt bad for the animals. Hey, I am telling you, as a youth, I'm gonna get real. I'm getting real with you all. As a youth, I was the kind of guy, I would go somewhere by people and I don't really know their dog. It's like, that's not my dog. And if I see the dog with ticks, I want to go and pull off the ticks and stuff. Yeah. I was that weird one. And really didn't like to see animals hurt and, well, I still don't like to see that. But I was never a vegetarian, nor a vegan. Because I understand the realities of life. Some things die in order for others to live. That's just the cycle of life. Now, as I said at the very beginning, this whole thing raises another question, because it's not like the fireworks are feeding us per se. We don't eat the fireworks. So this isn't even about whether animals deserve to die for us to eat food, because that question isn't a question to me. I'm sorry if you're a vegan in the live, in the chat. My apologies if you don't like that, but I don't find that a realistic question to me. I am an omnivore. I learned this since primary school. I am an omnivore. When you look at my teeth structure, there are teeth there for tearing meat and teeth there for grinding also. I am an omnivore, so I eat meat. But in this case, it's just for entertainment. Is it okay to say forget about those animals, even just for our entertainment? Because I could tell you, I was there, the fireworks were nice. And this could sound bad, but the noise is kind of part of the effect of the fireworks. Good night, SM Resources, the sponsor of these charts. If you're over there on TikTok and want to check them out, if you're wondering where the charts come from, SM Resources right there in the chat. Give them a follow, give them a look up if you're interested in getting some more charts. Yeah, the noise is part of the effects of the fireworks. Like, to me, even if the fireworks could have been muted, I kind of want the noise. When it reaches to the high point, the finale, the crescendo, as it were. And if you're just seeing the lights, it's like, oh, nice lights. But when you're hearing that explosion with it, it's an increased effect, I must admit. So, is all that entertainment and added effect enough to just say forget about those animals? Well, the answer is already there, to be very honest. The answer has already been answered, but we go on. The turnout was low to medium. This is Newsday in their visit to the zoo. They visited the zoo the day after. Thursday, today, the day after the whole fireworks display, they went down there to the zoo to get some interviews of the animals and see what the animals' perspective were firsthand. One small boy threw a tantrum upon leaving, only to be reassured by a woman that the rest of the family was now coming out too. Like, that's such a random bit to be in the national news. Like, if you're the parents of that boy, you're in the news for your little boy throwing a tantrum. While Newsday could not tell if animals had been disturbed during the previous night's fireworks, it seems like the animals were not giving any statements. By midday, they generally looked quite content. A tiger and a lion were spotted asleep in each of their cages, as were most of the snakes, semi-indoors in their tiny glass enclosures. A kangaroo was half asleep, sheltering in deep shade in a corner of its yard under a broad-leafed tree against the sun beating down from a virtually cloudless sky over the capital city. Someone over... Who wrote this? Sean Douglas over there on Newsday. He was having a time on this article. He was enjoying himself. He really wanted to explain, to show that he was more than just a news writer. He can describe. He can make you feel like you were there in the zoo also. Well done, sir, well done. Several quank sporting coats of black bristles, plus an agouti and her cutest ever baby, being lovingly groomed by its mother's tongue, stood contently in ample shade. Two ocelots were fairly mellow, the first with a slightly swollen belly, possibly marking pregnancy in their small spaces. Sir, I get you. You're Charles, how would you say, no, I will not have you. If you're thinking of it as an article, then it might be an awful article, but don't think of it as an article. It's a descriptive essay with some news inside of it. It's a descriptive essay, really and truly. The zoo had an abundance, possibly overabundance, of macaws, displaying their red and aquamarine plumage in two cages, one of modest size. Two giraffes and a zebra seemed content in their enclosures. Also spotted were monkeys, flamingos, several scarlet ibises, and a small otter swimming joyously in his or her outdoor pond. Noisy Fireworks at the Independence celebration 2 years ago were blamed for the death of a young male kangaroo, Joey, very creatively named Joey. Very much SEA vibe. Yeah. If we're being real, there's a bit there's a bit of SEA vibe to it, but a well done SEA vibe though. A well done one. I will not have you. It was well done. I enjoyed reading about the day at the zoo. That this should have been entitled A Day at the Zoo. You know how you name those essays a nice name, like A Day at the Zoo. I liked it. But yeah, 2 years ago, a kangaroo died several days. 17 days was it after the Independence Day, and no, it wasn't 17 days after the Independence Day. They didn't say how long after the Independence Day, but a couple days after the Independence Day, with the fireworks, a kangaroo died, and they blamed the fireworks for such. But it seems like this year, at least in the zoo, there may have been no loss of life for the animals. So the question is, do we actually care that much? Like, do people actually care that much? And, you know, it's like those things that you regularly see, well, at least I regularly see, people pointing out the hypocrisy in certain vegan causes, etc. Uh, certain vegan causes, etc. And like some people point out, many vegans eating vegetables and plants and all of that. Those come from the ground, and in order to plant those plants, you have to till the ground and kill several thousands, maybe millions of animals. Lots of animals die during the process, and that's just the reality. We're so big, we're so powerful that nearly anything we do causes some kind of damage to the natural life out there. That's the reality. What are we going to do about that? So, I wonder what the consensus would be in the chat. If the question was, we have fireworks and some animals die each year, or no fireworks ever anymore, what would your answer be? I'm interested to see how anthropocentric my chat generally is. How many of you all think that humans are just the special ones out there? Or if all animals have an equal right to everything? What you all see? No one is saying though. Why y'all say no fireworks and protect the animals, or forget about the animals? Move the zoo. But in the meantime, if the zoo is not moved, that's the question I'm asking. If the zoo is not moved, I don't miss it, and I haven't gone to a display in probably 6 to 7 years. Now, I understand that view. The majority of Trinidad does not go to the display. The majority of Trinidad. It's a minority of people that actually get there. But when you look at the people who are there, Jamelia Williams says no fireworks and protect the animals. When you look at the people who are there, lots of the time, it's families. And there may be some families in Trinidad where this may be part of their calendar of events for the year, and their calendar may not be that expansive. It's a yearly event for families. If it's something that one of the few events put on so widely accepted in the country, one of those few events where we see that family push, is it worth it to keep something like that alive? Forget about them animals is one day for the year. Child says that's not nice. Well, life isn't nice, you know. I agree that the zoo should be moved, more room drive-through experience. I agree the zoo should be moved. We all agree on that one, I believe. The animals were captured for two main reasons: to awe and educate people about them, and to preserve endangered species. Well, how many very endangered species are there in the zoo? You know, a lot of, like, there is quite a bit of debate in the animal rights circle about whether zoos are moral in and of themselves, whether zoos are a good thing. There are some animal rights activists who would say that the zoos themselves are torture. And I could understand that reasoning, to be very honest. If you look at a bird, and a bird who would be accustomed to the open sky, and you think of taking them and trapping them inside of a cage that is 10 by 5 or 10 by 8, let's say 10 feet by 8 feet, and that bird was accustomed to the entire open sky, he could have gone out there and flown in any direction he wished. And now he's in a little cage like that. Like, who are you to talk about the suffering of animals? You're willing for the animals to suffer for your entertainment, for you to be able to see them. Someone else is willing for the animals to suffer for their entertainment, for them to be willing to see fireworks. I think if you could have asked a lion, would he rather be trapped in a cage there walking around in circles, or would he rather be on the Serengeti? I think Mr. Lion would have said Serengeti. And you see, that's what I was saying, for example, about the vegans. When we try to move to the direction of animals holding a significant amount of rights, even as compared to people, you start to question which rights would you give them? Which rights? Which side would you be okay with on the animals? So, okay, it's okay to torture the animals for entertainment if it's in a zoo, but if it's fireworks, then it's not okay. And some people talk about pets. Well, you see, these arguments could go down a really deep rabbit hole. Even when it comes to a pet, pets were taken from nature, and we selectively bred some of these things till they are ridiculous. To think that a pug is in relation to a wolf, like, if Mr. Wolf had a say in the matter, I think he would have said, do not take my babies and breed them through your creepy choices into being a weird, self-destructive animal like a pug, or a demon spawn like a chihuahua. But we would buy these animals that have already been bred, and if you're looking at it on a grand scale, that might be some kind of contravention of animal rights, and we're willing to get these animals and then say no, no one else should be able to burst fireworks to torture my animal. Again, a good question. People with huskies, there are some who would debate having a husky in a tropical country is torture. And listen, anybody whose salary raises above 10,000 for the month thinks they must own a husky in Trinidad and Tobago. Don't act like we don't know this here. Once you reach a certain class in the country, you must get a little blue-eye husky. You know that. And you're going to say, forget about them and that overheating. We'll figure out a way, we'll comb off that extra hair or something. You'll figure out a way to do it because that's what tickles your fancy. Well, if explosion tickles me and my family's fancy, and that's one of the main events on our calendar for the year, who are you to say that we shouldn't do it so that your dog should feel comfortable all around the year? Like, I mean, you could put the dog in a kennel. Make sure the kennel is well and padded. Interesting question. Interesting question. Interesting question. Now, the fireworks and all of that, the whole independence, the events and display and all of that, part of the idea is nation building and, trying to build the togetherness of the country. As I did a video on independence, the idea of nation, a nation is the people. Now, obviously, the people as contained by the land also, yes, but the people, the nation refers to the people. So in order for nation building to work, what they generally want is that togetherness. The more people feel like they have a connection with each other, the easier it is to build that nation. The nation feels united in their own purpose. And that's part of the reason for some of this bread and circus business. It's been a part of humanity for a very long time. And the idea also is that even in a democratic country like ours, with the political landscape that we have, the hope is that any side of the political spectrum could join together at this Independence Day, where we celebrate and commemorate the nation itself, not just one side or the other, the nation of Trinidad and Tobago. But our opposition had a different idea. They said they were not going to participate. And like, I've been looking around on social media and I see there are quite a few people expressing their disappointment in Trinidad and Tobago on this Independence Day, well, that Independence Day, and I understand it. And there are those nearly every year. To be very honest, nearly every year there are some people like that. But to me, that's like the people criticizing deadbeat dads on Father's Day. Like, yes, we understand their criticisms, but this isn't really what the day is about. And I mean, anyone who watches enough of my content, I bounced up a fireman in TIC, the Trade and Investment Convention, and he was telling me, hey, you look familiar. Really, man, that always complaining about something or the other. And I'm like, no, I don't complain. I raise issues. But fair enough, I do raise several critical issues of my country constantly. But to take the time on Independence Day to say that, yeah, we're not celebrating because there's nothing to celebrate for, I find that distasteful. And a part of it that kind of specifically rubs me the wrong way is knowing the reality that some of it, a lot of it, if we're being honest, a lot of it is politically influenced. If we're being honest, we know that a lot of that discontent with how the country is running is politically influenced. Now, I remember which year that would have been, 2012, for our 50th anniversary, when the partnership was in power, and there were stickers that they released. There were stickers that they released and little flags, and I saw that all about the country. I would be curious to know how many people who had those stickers and flags in 2012 and could have understood that although the country wasn't going perfectly back then, could have understood we'd celebrate the country. How many of them are the same people now saying that there's nothing to celebrate? And I'm saying that because I know some of them for sure. That's something that I regularly do on social media. I like looking at people's remarks and watching to see if there's some consistency, because my memory works. And if you have the same profile, people can literally go search it back up and see if your discontent with the negatives in the country only comes up when certain political parties are in power, and that is ridiculous. I find that to be ridiculous. That's not the idea of nation building. That's not how you get a successful country. That's how you get tribalism. That's how you get your country crashing. That's how you get your country degenerating into petty squabbles. However, there was one man in the opposition that did not heed the call, and it's the second time he did something like that. Sankar breaks UNC ranks again, attends major Independence Day events. UNC Councillor Samuel Sankar appeared to be the only member of the opposition attending yesterday's 60th Independence Anniversary celebrations at the Queen's Park Savannah in Port of Spain. Opposition leader Kamala Prasad-Visasa and her MPs were not present. Officials indicated, as has been customary during their tenure in opposition. However, Sankar, who is from the Tunapuna Piako Regional Corporation, was seen at the Queen's Park Savannah celebrations and other state functions. I read that. And I recall that he was the only one from the UNC present during the meeting for councillors also, where the local government minister and the prime minister was supposed to be there also, were meant to meet with the individual councillors of each region around the country, all of them to, discuss local government matters. And what would you have it? One showed up. Now, this is how I think we could help things, to me, in a country like ours. If the political parties were ruled in such a way that this man could have gone up for election in his party without interference, a man like that would have won the leadership of the UNC. So, for example, if you look at, it's not a perfect example, but if you look at like the US system where they have their primary elections to select who is going to run for this party right before they have the general elections or the main elections, somebody like that would have won. But the problem is the nature of our political party system. He would be very likely sidelined from the UNC and decreasing the amount of power and effect he could have in our politics. And in order for him to actually be effective again, he would have to switch parties and go to another party, which would be kind of the same thing because they would be expecting his blind loyalty again. There must be a way for us to figure out how we can encourage people within parties to not remain blindly loyal to the party. That people are rewarded within parties for being willing to break party ranks when it makes sense. I really hope Mr. Sankar excels. He'd be treated like Bernie Sanders. Well, poor Bernie. But that's part of Bernie's fault. Bernie Sanders keeps getting cheated to some extent out of it. And he keeps right there at it again. Fate springs eternal, apparently. And he doesn't even have a very youthful heart. So that's strange. Now, we're moving on to education. Education, where we learned the other day, Bernie Sanders is a communist sellout, cannot be compared. I know who Bernie Sanders is. That can only happen if the voting population feels the same correctly. And I think a lot in the voting population will feel the same. Part of the problem is that you could only vote for who is presented in front of you. When you go on the general election day, you cannot select who you would vote for from anyone in the country. You vote for what you see in front of you on that paper. And what you see in front of you on that paper is very difficult to actually get control of. The political parties are registered corporations for the most part. They're private entities. You cannot go in there and determine how things are done. And then the trickery and treachery that goes on inside of those private companies then produces the candidates that we get to select on election day. So that's a tricky process. But we're heading to education now. The other day I was speaking about the fact that of the 9,000 students that were supposed to come out for the vacation revision program or remedial program, where some of those students who performed very poorly in SEA, they had a whole program made up there for them to come during the vacation period. They were supposed to come and the teachers were there. They were going to help them, catch up as much as possible to the other students. Now, unfortunately, 1,900 students only turned up. Out of the 9,000 that were supposed to turn up, only 1,900 did, unfortunately. You could put the water there. You could bring the horse to the water, but you can't make the horse drink. And in this case, it seems like they couldn't even bring the horse to the water in the first place. They had the water there. They labeled which horses were supposed to come, and they decided no. Now, Charles is saying parents to blame, and that is the idea we're getting from the National PTA also. Parents ashamed. NPTA disappointed at low turnout for vacation classes. Some parents opted not to send their children to the Ministry of Education's vacation revision program held at 33 secondary schools during the July-August vacation because they were ashamed of their children being identified among the group of pupils scoring under 30% in this year's secondary entrance assessment examination. And so human typical that we always place the shame at the wrong spot. So often we place the shame at the wrong spot. How could you be ashamed of your child receiving help and not be ashamed of the child failing? The shame is supposed to be in the failure, not in getting help for the failure. The shame is supposed to be in having help available for you and refusing the help. That is something shameful. And as I was speaking about the other night, when we were speaking about this issue and some of the solutions that they have planned for this, I was saying that the very premise of the education for all system teaches people to place the shame in the wrong place. So the junior secondary schools had a stigma and shame to it. So let's change the name of the schools. Like, people are going to forget what the schools are. The name junior secondary, the name Five Rivers Junior Secondary, those words themselves with those English letters, those words themselves didn't conjure shame magically. No, it was the fact that the school had children who were performing at a lower level. The low level performance was where the shame was, the stigma. Trinbago is a place where image is everything. No one likes to look or feel bad. Okay, that's understandable. But my thing is, you're aiming for the solution at the wrong place. We're aiming for the solution at the wrong place. How could you say that I don't want to look bad, but I will not figure out a way for my child to excel in schooling? Then what is going to happen at the next exam? I don't understand why people act like they didn't exist in a school system as a child before. When you're in a class, you know the duncy children in the class. All the students know the duncy children in the class. If you take the duncy children, you don't put them in a school, in a different school, you put them all in the same class with all the other children, the stigma of their lower level of learning is still going to be there. Children are still ruthless. They are still going to talk about it. The shame is in having help available and not taking the help. That's where the shame is. The idea of shame is supposed to be something where you feel that embarrassment based on something wrong. Getting help isn't something wrong. That is ridiculous. If, as the NPTA is saying, is true, and many of these parents, true ninja, Mr. Interesting, and many of these parents really just kept their children away because they didn't want anybody to know that my child needed the help. Well, I hope at least that those other children whose parents kept them away because they didn't want anyone else to know, that at least you got the help some other way for them. You know, you have to get the help some other way. Like if you're saying you're ashamed for everyone to know, okay, well, get the private help. If it is that you're ashamed for everyone to know and you're still not going to get the help, then here's what. Everyone is still going to know. You know, a prime example of that to me, and this could be a touchy topic to some, but a prime example of that to me is when you watch how some people treat things like pregnancy, and the pregnancy is the big shame. But you know, if you're coming from a religious culture and that's where the shame is actually in what got you pregnant. The pregnancy is just a manifestation of that act. So the shame isn't in the result of it. The shame is in that, what you did the months ago. The shame isn't in realizing the child isn't performing well. The shame is in not doing enough for the child to perform well. As a parent, at least, that's where your shame would be. This was revealed by National Parent-Teacher Association President Kevin David on Tuesday as he expressed disappointment at the low turnout of pupils for the remedial classes. That was a disaster, he said, of the poor attendance. On Monday, the Ministry of Education, we know the numbers, they said it provided support to these pupils in the form of targeted revision in mathematics, English language, arts, and writing. Of the 19,079 pupils who wrote the 2022 SE exam, 5,305 scored 30% or below. Speaking to the Express via telephone, David said having visited some of the program centers, he was impressed with the VRP content and curriculum, but I was very much disappointed with the attendance. We found out that some of the parents who would have indicated that they were ashamed of allowing their children to come and being identified with the 30%ers, he said. Some of that, as I was pointing out before, was created by us leaning into the reality of the stigmatization of junior sex. I think that should have never been done. We should not, as a country, have allowed people to say that the junior sex are so shameful that we must rename them. Because that doesn't, as I've continuously said, that doesn't remove the stigma. I think it reinforces the stigma. It says that, yeah, when we point out that these schools are bad, it's so bad that we have to try and hide it in some other way. So everyone in the country is always very conscious about being labeled as that kind of junior sect belonging person. If instead of that, we leaned into it, understanding that, yes, we have this reality where some students may have fallen behind for some strange reason, and many of us who were around during the junior sec time, we would know of many students who went junior sec and excelled beyond many of the others, even in the so-called prestige schools. Yes, there's a reality. Some people may have faltered for some reason, and it makes sense you give them some kind of targeted help. And if we focused in on that, then even in this time, after the pandemic, when these 30%ers happened, well, we already have a system created to help people who may be lagging behind the majority. We already would have had that system. Nobody realistically wants to be associated with anything bad, correct? But the junior sex weren't something bad. The topic is education. The junior sex weren't something bad. They were meant as the solution for something bad. And as I've noted, it's kind of very interesting that we seem to have gone full circle now. The ministry is saying that some of these schools are going to have to be readjusted so that they could cater for these students. Wow, a different type of school, really? That same thing again. And they're going to introduce an exam. And they're going to introduce an exam at the end of Form 2 to ascertain the level that the student would have attained at that point in time. And I heard the minister talking about the harkening back to older days when there was that, was it primary school leaving exam or something like that, that you could have taken, and it would give you a qualification for certain jobs. Good night, Jonathan Henry. You see, the issue is people no longer focus on facts, they now focus on titles. Tony, the ambassador, says, because it was you would put the most, because if it was you would put most resources in those schools. Well, here's the thing, Tony, the ambassador. The reality is, many of the junior sects had some of the most resources. That is part of the reality. For some people who went to prestige schools, I don't know how many of you all are in the chat. Some of you all that went to prestige schools, I don't know how many of you all had that experience, but going from your prestige school, going into a junior sect for sports or something, did you have the experience of watching some of their facilities and being amazed at how advanced it is compared to the quote-unquote prestige schools? I know that. Some of these prestige schools are imagining labs. They don't have the equipment to do the labs. Some of them, they're lacking material and they're out there. So I don't agree with what you're saying there, Tony, the ambassador. It's not that these schools were underfunded or given too little resources. I am not saying those schools were perfect. I'm not saying that they were ideal in what they were doing, but I could understand the idea. I could understand the idea. The idea was some students don't perform at the same level as others. It makes sense. We stratify a system where students who may have stumbled for something or the other, because there are stories of some students who went through some kind of tragedy in standard 5. Yeah. The prestige schools are often funded by the alumni. And to be honest, in modern times, the alumni seem to be doing a lot more in most schools. They're coming alive more. But back in early 2000s, I didn't find alumni did that much. But yeah, and these schools were meant to figure that out. So sometimes I know of some cases, so a child suffers some kind of trauma, a parent or something, someone dies when they're in standard 5 right before the exam, and that really threw them into a loop. Okay, you don't take them then and put them in the same stream as everyone else who still functioned at the same level going through the education system. Okay, you stumbled, we put you in a school here where we're trying to figure out what's going on. Is it that you stumble and you can catch back up? Okay, you can catch back up. At the end of Form 3, when you write that exam, you could go to any school you want. There were people who went to junior sex and after Form 3 went to Presentation College, QRC, etc., etc., etc. That's the idea. Or is it that it's not that you stumbled, this line of academia just isn't for you? Okay, well then there are trades available that you can go into and streamline here. And to me, my view is, even if none of those seem like they're ideal, this person does not want that schooling structure, take them to work, apprenticeship. Nothing is wrong with that. Streaming has not been successful in my experience. No, I've taught, and as I've said before, I have launched Mindful Education, and we'd be starting small pod classes this opening term coming right here, and private tutoring also. If you'd like to head over to Instagram and you could follow up there. If you have any inquiries, you could send a message. There's a phone number and my email. Everything is over there on Mindful Education. And part of the idea I have in that is because I've taught before, and I've taught large classes also. And in large classes, one of the most frustrating things for me as a teacher, because my style of teaching, what I like to do, my intention when I'm teaching a student is I'm trying to figure out how this person learns. Because what I've realized, everyone doesn't learn the same way. And sometimes you're just trying to twist. Is it a square? All right. Is it a square Or is it a diamond? Or would you rather me call it a kite? Or you're trying to figure out what is the way to open up this person's mind. Because to me, every human is curious. And once you're able to open up their curiosity, people learn for themselves. Went to an all-girls school in Port of Spain and we weren't given the opportunity to do certain things like that's correct. People would learn for themselves once their curiosity is opened up. But when you have a class that large, you can look and you're seeing someone, they caught on to the thread of the lesson and they want you to go ahead leading this thread on because they're already on the thread of the lesson. They want to learn more. They want to follow the thread. And you can't go too fast because there are others who aren't catching as fast. So you have to slow down for that person. And you see that they got bored a little bit. And they're like, yeah, whatever. You say this about three times already. All right, okay, whatever. And then there are some you're seeing that you lost them at some point in time. And you're like, anyone has any questions? And you know they aren't going to ask any questions in the class because they don't want to feel like the one holding back the whole class. If you're a teacher good at teaching and perceptive enough, you could tell that. You could look out at a class of 40 students and see, yeah, these 5 students there, they're lost. Yeah, these 3 students there, they're fed up and bored. You could see that. I feel like the ideology of a trade school is looked down upon. Not everyone can be an accountant. That's facts. Bad teachers, yes, or teachers who are not really interested. I disagree on that also, Mr. Tony the Ambassador. Now, I understand what you are trying to say for a lot of it, but I disagree. The junior secondary and senior secondary systems did not have bad teachers. Want to know how I know? Many of the most reputable lessons teachers were teachers in junior sex and senior sex. And they would go out there on the private market and have very reputable lessons programs. And it's not that they were lazy in school. They had students who would excel in school. If you want to ask me, a major part of the problem in a lot of in the older school system, the junior secondary to senior secondary system, is parents. The school system functions well when parents are involved, and many of those schools did not have parental involvement. And what you'd have to try to do is figure out a way that the system could counterbalance for the lack of proper parenting. And one of the problems that happens is that some students who may not have that good parenting at home may not have good discipline in the first place. And one student, their problem may be a lack of discipline. And that's why they are performing not too well. While another student, their problem may be just that their mind isn't tuned to this kind of academic work. And if you put those two in the same place, you could end up with problems. And that's what you saw sometimes in some of those junior secondary schools. I've been around. I've seen the social dynamic there. Some students who they're just maybe slower learners, and some students who are what we'd call bad children. They're very indisciplined. And that's why they're there. Some of them are brilliant. They're just very indisciplined. And all of them are in the same system. And then when it got worse when we attempted to squeeze everyone into those schools. That was not the intention of those schools. Facts, I went to a prestige school and did math lessons with a teacher from a junior secondary. I know, I'm not speaking on guess here. I am very much aware of that. Many of the teachers in some of those junior secondary schools were well known to be very good at their craft. And some of them would go over and beyond. Over and beyond. Because I know many teachers in those schools who would give free lessons, who would give free classes. And they would be some of the best lessons teachers, and they would give free classes to students in some of their classes in the school. and some of the parents just would not let them go. We're seeing it right here. 9,000 students were supposed to be going to free vacation lessons. Free. They did not go. Only 1,900 turned up. That's not because of the teachers. That's not because of the school. That's not because of the funding for the school. That's all on the parents. What are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about that? How can you solve something like that? I don't think you can solve something like that from the school side. So I don't think those criticisms that were often leveled at the junior secondary to senior comprehensive systems, I don't think those criticisms bear truth. When I look back at those systems, I found those systems functioned, not that they functioned ideally, but they certainly seem to have functioned much better than what we are doing now. And even the students in the senior secondary schools, the students there, to me, when I remember then, the students there had that sense of pride even, because their school was different. They had their technical drawing stuff. They're doing mechanical engineering in Form 4 and 5. While you in your prestige school, you're doing physics and math and add math. And yes, that is a route to mechanical engineering. But they're already doing the actual mechanical engineering. They're taking apart machines, putting them back together. Students at the age of 16 are holding welding rods and running a little bead. Listen. That is something that gave people a little difference. Many of the students who went to those senior secondary schools, some people remember those days with a negative light, but they weren't like that necessarily. Many of the students in those schools didn't feel lesser than, and you certainly weren't going to try to tell them they were lesser than. Because remember, those senior secondary schools, the age difference is that nearly every student in that school is an older student. So if you see a group of senior secondary students on the road, you even in your prestige school and feeling nice about passing SE with top results, you like, yeah, yes, sir, and you walk your own way. My friend learned AC technology and has a huge business now, and he learned it in Compre. There are many people like that. I know presently people in woodworks, people in joinery that are very wealthy that learned the trade in secondary school. They learned it in a school. And we chopped up that to throw everyone into this attempt to streamline things. And how is that working out? And we're seeing now the pandemic, I think, just highlighted these things more. The pandemic highlighted these things more, where we had that falter with the pandemic, and now we're seeing the gap between the students increasing even more. And the system that we have is not created to deal with that reality. Many people, it seems like many people would rather pretend like that reality doesn't exist, and the reality being pretending like it doesn't exist just exacerbates the problem. It just gets worse. It just gets worse. Because pretending it doesn't exist doesn't solve it. Now, we're back to trying to get some new different schools to teach things in a different way, and an exam back at the end of Form 2 again. Full circle, as I've said before. All right. Let me tell you a little conspiracy before I go. We go in. But I saw a series of news articles that were very curious to me. I thought that I just have to jump in a bit on the conspiratorial side with this. So, in Colorado, it's just a hard segue, nothing to do with education in and of itself. But in Colorado recently, I was reading a story about people being locked out of their thermostats during a heat wave. So, here's what's going on there, right? Place extra hot, but also there's a bit of problem coming from the power supply, power supply on the low side. So people go to their smart home devices to, place hot, let's raise that thermostat. The thermostat says you're locked out. You cannot get, well, actually lower that thermostat. You cannot get the temperature any colder by orders of the governor. Take your heat. And I'm just looking at that with the idea of so many people going towards the smart home, smart devices, everything being controlled by the internet. Are we really ready for the kind of control we would be under if that does indeed happen? Let me see if I pull up the article. Thousands of XL customers locked out of thermostats during energy emergency. During the dog days of summer, it's important to keep your home cool, but when thousands of XL customers in Colorado tried adjusting their thermostats Tuesday, they learned they had no control over the temperatures in their own homes. Temperatures climbed into the 90s Tuesday, which is why Tony Tallarico tried to crank up the air conditioning in his partner's Arvada home. I mean, it was 90 out and it was right during the peak period, Tallarico said. It was hot. That's why when he saw a message on the thermostat stating the temperature was locked due to an energy emergency, normally when we see a message like that, we're able to override it, Tallarico said. In this case, we weren't. So our thermostat was locked in at 78 or 79. On social media, dozens of XL customers complained of similar experiences, some reporting home temperatures as high as 88 degrees. It's similar to electric cars as well, Jonathan Henry is saying. Yes, yes. And here's the thing, Jonathan Henry. Californians, this is another story I'm pulling up here. You're right with that electric car. Californians asked to not charge electric cars days after gas ban announcement. So, California has banned the sale of new gas vehicles because they're just so into the environment. Now, the thing is, it's impossible to have an environmentally friendly electric car grid. It's just not going to work. In the long run, it would be worse on the environment. To extract the material to produce one electric car battery probably uses as much carbon as a gas car would use in what, a decade or something like that. So, yeah, it's not really about the environment. When you actually look at the facts of the matter, you see that this does not seem to be very environmentalish to me. But they banned that. And just as they banned that, they're letting you know, could you please not charge your electric car too much? It would put strain on the grid. Now, imagine the point where they could cut off your power on your electric car. Your electric car is controlled by an app almost surely. They have remote access to it. So in the hot days of summer, you're like, you know what? Turn up my thermostat. Turn down my thermostat. They're like, nope, you can't do that. You'd say, all right, I'll go for a drive. You jump in your car. Well, sorry, your car didn't charge overnight. Your car didn't charge overnight. So, yikes. You walk out the road and you have to hope that public transport is working. You're at the pure mercy of everyone in control over there. And smart homes are selling like that. Smart homes are selling like that. I think also the pandemic that came up recently, this recent pandemic, has allowed a lot of people to see that many governments are okay with taking a lot of power on their own. They are okay with taking a lot of power on their own, or they lock you out of your bank account. Now, locking you out of your bank account has happened before multiple times. But locking you out of your bank account is still a bit harder when it's actual money, hard money. you could try to make a case. But when everything is cyber money, everything is online money, everything is digital currency, then they could determine what your money could buy. They could determine how much of your money could be spent on each thing per month. They see every cent you have. They see what you buy. They see who pays you for everything. There's no hiding. Imagining a system, a world with digital currency, smart homes, electric smart cars, and smart phones that we already have. Good luck escaping a system like that if you ever needed to escape. All right, that's all I have for now, folks. Any further questions or comments before I dive out? No meat for you. That's them. That's them. They could eat their crickets and their mealworms and their synthetic meat. Let Bill Gates do that whole Beyond Meat nonsense. I'm fine, thank you. I rather the actual meat. The age of robot uprising has begun. I placed some comments in YouTube. Yeah, I'm sorry. My apologies for YouTube. I know I neglect you all over here, but it's partly because the comments are delayed. The comments are delayed, so that's why the neglect is there. I read them in delay. Hey, that is why you are seeing this happening in the school Trinidad and Tobago. It's a rich country for nothing is reaching, but nothing is reaching the poor community. The population is 1.5 million, and the money which is made from gas and oil and royalties is more than $1.5 million in TT. So it all deals with leadership. Yes, it does all deal with leadership, but I don't believe the problem in the schools, even in the lower class communities, has to do with money. More money to them isn't going to solve the problem. All right, folks, I will see you guys again for the next Mindful Live. That will be tomorrow at 9 or 9:15. I will see you then. If you're streaming this over on TikTok or on Instagram, you can head over to my YouTube channel. You can catch all of the lives there on replay if you so like. If you missed anything like Tyson did over there on, on TikTok, if you missed anything, well, you could head over and get that on my YouTube channel. Nathan Springer over there. Head over there and subscribe. I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.